Hello and welcome to the Franchise Tag Podcast. Adam, we are back again with our top 10 struggling teams in the NFL right now. We are just over halfway through the teams now. We are going to be looking at the New York Jets.
Do you think I'm going to let you get away with that? We're at the draft show and you've just done the normal show's intro. I mean, unbelievable behaviour. I know it's early in the morning when we're recording, but honestly.
Well, welcome to the draft show, where you can find out everything you need to know about all the teams, all the futures, all the players. But we're over halfway through now, and we're back to another New York team. It's the New York Jets. We'll bring up the draft for you so you can see. There they are, sitting in 7th place at 3-10. Another one of those 3-10 teams. Not the season they were expecting. This is one of the few teams in this order that we expected a lot of them to be in this position. These were expected to be pushing for the playoffs, definitely in the playoffs, but for some people, yet again, for them, it's just not quite happened. They just can't, no matter what this team does, they cannot get the quarterback right, can they? Adam, how have they got to this point? And let's have a look at how they can move forward.
I mean, really, it depends how far you want to go back when it comes to the Jets. That's how much of a disaster they've been.
What would you have to go back? You'd have to go back to the Brett Favre year, surely, for anything decent.
So I personally have gone back to Rex Ryan, is where I've gone back to. So they did get a couple of playoff appearances under him. And that's kind of like where I looked at it. So he was there 2009 to 2014. But since he's gone, 0 playoff appearances. Been a real struggle since then. You had Todd Bowles there, obviously now the head coach of the Bucs, was the coach for a while. He was there for 3 years, couldn't get anything done. Adam Gase was there for 2 years. We all know how successful that was. And obviously they've just got rid of Robert Saleh this year, but he was there for 3 years or 2.5 years, really. So there was that as well. They just a brief sort of look at their history. A lot of the issues has come through drafting. It's not been great for them. I think when you look at like Joe Douglas as the general manager, who obviously has just lost his job this season, he was there for 5 years, and I think that he made some good draft picks, but there were some that were looking back on it pretty poor choices, and to a certain degree I do feel a lot of this has actually been a bit luck more than anything else. They've kind of been a bit unlucky with certain ones. So in 2020 he took Mekhi Becton. Mm-hmm. We all know how Becton's career has gone. It's been a bit of a struggle injury-wise, and he just hasn't been able to keep fit. But they could have taken Tristan Wirfs. He was there. And so they kind of went for... I mean, Becton was this sort of like... Back in 2020 was kind of the sort of almost like a hybrid of just being this really athletic O-line guy, but also just this massive guy as well, which you didn't see so often back then. And I think they went for the sort of big swing, thinking that this guy is going to completely transform the O-line and help out whichever quarterback we have. At the time, it was Sam Darnold, and this will be great. Unfortunately, because he constantly got injured all the time, it was really difficult. Sam Darnold didn't really work out. They then, in 2021, brought in Zach Wilson. That didn't work out, largely because the O-line was a bit of a mess. They kept on sort of doing things with the O-line and moving people around is what I noticed when you sort of go through it. In 2023, they then go and take Will McDonald, who I think McDonald has been okay. He hasn't been too bad for these last couple of years. But again, it's not something that's really made a huge difference. And so it kind of feels a little bit like they just haven't quite got it right. And I think Joe Douglas has done everything that he kind of could when it comes to draft picks, especially first round draft picks, and really tried to sort out that O-line, but the mixture of Beckham being injured all the time. There was one point they had Morgan Moses there, and then they got rid of Morgan Moses, and he's actually been all right still. He hasn't been too bad, and he's over. That was a shame that they lost him and got rid of him, and they brought in George Fant instead, and it just kind of didn't really work. Everything that they did, it didn't really work, and I think that it's something that we can all say with most teams. If you haven't got a good O-line, then it's very, very difficult for the quarterback to really be able to do anything. Anyway, so we're now here now, haven't been able to do anything for multiple years. They've brought Aaron Rodgers in. He goes and gets injured in the first game, largely because the O-line, the guy who was meant to be protecting him, just zooms straight past and takes him out and ends up doing his Achilles in the first season. And now you watch him and you see glimpses of the old Aaron Rodgers at times, but it's not as consistent as what it used to be. And it kind of feels a little bit like, is this becoming the end of, a quarterback who currently is 40, 41. He's in his second year there. He's got one more year left on his contract. So he will be 42 if he plays next year. It's a really difficult one. They fired the GM, so Joe Douglas is gone. Robert Saleh's gone, so they've got an interim, but he's not going to be the head coach. So we've got both positions to look at for a little bit here. And it's just a bit of a mess.
Yeah, I think you're right in what you say in terms of the drafting. Obviously, if you don't get the quarterback right, your job's definitely on the line. It doesn't matter whether you drafted Garrett Wilson and Breece Hall and players like that. It matters whether you get the quarterback right, because if you don't get that right, you're in this position. And they just seem to never be able to fully get it right. I don't remember the last time they did draft the right quarterback. They seem to always go for projects for some reason. I think Sam Darnold was very raw out of college, and we're now just seeing him come into his own. And Zach Wilson was very raw as well. So it's a bit of an odd one for them. We'll talk about head coach, because this is one of the first proper teams we kind of know they definitely need to hire, because they don't have anyone that's interim. So I think this is the first one of the top 10 that we know 100% they need a replacement. There is a guy that has come out and said, I want the job, I'd like the job, and you've already mentioned him already, and it's Rex Ryan. Rex Ryan has said on shows that he would be interested in doing it again, because I think the way he left, obviously you talked about how good his time was there and how much success he had. I think it was the general manager at the time didn't like him, so wanted to move on from him and start again. Whereas I think it came out that Woody Johnson, the owner, really got on with Rex Ryan and didn't want him to go. So I think there's still that relationship there where he'd be like, I got on with him, I'd like him back. So I think there's a possibility that we could see Rex Ryan back at the Jets and maybe try and rekindle some of that success that he had. What do you think about that?
Yeah, I mean, it wouldn't be the worst idea in the world if that was the case. The biggest concern with Rex Ryan is obviously he hasn't been around for 10 years now, and it is a case of whether the way that he wanted to play is still going to be doable in the NFL. It's also about whether or not they can find a general manager who's going to be happy with him as well. Because, like I say, it's both. Both positions need filling here.
Do you not think that Rex Ryan could do both? Maybe potentially.
I think if you're doing that, I think that you might be to give literally both jobs over to a guy who hasn't been involved in the NFL for quite a long time now. I mean, in the nicest possible way, they're already a little bit of the laughing stock of the NFL. I mean, I feel like they're really going to end up going down that route if they did that. There are candidates that could do that. I mean, we've mentioned him on other shows. I have certainly. Mike Vrabel would be one that you sort of feel like could do both sides of it. But I do wonder if, to a certain degree, I think the Jets need to. The Jets have been a losing organisation for quite a long time, I think it's important that they go out and they find multiple people who have had success. I think that that's something that they really need to look at. So for me, I had a quick look at general managers and who's going to be around, who's assistants at other places. I think Ray Agnew from the Lions has helped sort of build that team up. So I think that he's the assistant general manager at the Lions. He would be a good choice. Mike Borgonzi, I think, is a potentially very good choice as the assistant general manager at Kansas City. You know, you've got a guy there. They've won 7 division titles, 2 Super Bowls. These are the sort of names I think you want to be looking at. Mike Greenberg from the Bucks, I think he was part of the Super Bowl win that was there. So I think there are plenty of names there who are like assistant GMs that maybe could come in and do a job. And I just feel like for general manager, you want that kind of guy who's young, hungry, ready to do something. I think that would be really exciting for the Jets, and they need that excitement because it's just not really worked out for them for the past 10 years. And then a head coach, again, I'd be shocked if Ben Johnson went here from the Lions. But maybe if you could get some sort of like, you know, Ray Agnew, Ben Johnson combination from the Lions, then maybe it's something that he might be willing to do. Mentioned Todd Monken loads of times in different shows. I think he would be great for this. But it's going to be a case of, it's going to be a project. And also you've got the added problem of whether or not you keep Aaron Rodgers and whether you want him as part of this project, or whether you think to yourself, it hasn't worked over the last 2 years, we've got to move on. And then literally start as a starting point, new general manager, new head coach, new quarterback, complete reset.
I think, yeah, that's the key to who you hire as well. I think the conversation from the owner, whether the GM, who's doing the GM now? Is it Savage is the GM currently interim?
I'm not sure who it is. I mean, he won't be there. It will be someone new coming in, but it's I can't imagine. I think they'll be looking for someone with a bit more experience, probably.
Now, what I was going to say is the Aaron Rodgers situation is what it stems on, because if he is going to stick around, or he's going to be even in the building, you're going to want a Vrabel or a Rex Ryan who's going to be able to handle him and not take not let him run away with the team like he's been doing in that previous season. So I think if you get in a youngster like a Ben Johnson or something like that, Rodgers is just going to walk all over him and be the bigger personality, and nothing's really going to change. So I think the Rodgers thing is key. So we'll talk about him first. What do you think, one, he should do, and two, the team should do? So
he has come out, he's pretty much come out and said that he wants to play. That doesn't necessarily mean not necessarily for the Jets, but he wants to play. That's what he's come out and said. So I can understand from his point of view why he wants to play. I think the idea of basically giving up after this year, retiring and going, I'm done, when you've got a 3-10 team. It feels very much like that would be quite a sad way to go when you think of how well he's played over the years. So I get it from his point of view as to why he wants to play. Like we said, doesn't necessarily mean for the Jets. I mean, if he wants to carry on the Favre thing, he'll be off to the Vikings. But
be a 1-year deal at the Vikings, won't it?
But so I think that he will want to play. Whether they decide to keep him on, if they get rid of him, they will have to take on a $23.5 million cap hit, which, considering they're expecting the cap to go up, and if he's gone, they become a rebuilding team. It's kind of like, and probably not necessarily, but most likely end up with a quarterback on a rookie contract. It's not the end of the world. So it is something that the Jets can do. I think it really, as we said, it really depends what angle we want to go down here, whether we think that they want to go new young head coach and do something different, or whether they want to go for this sort of like older, more what they would consider maybe more reliable, more experienced guy. And then, like you say, that means whether or not you keep Rodgers, I think. I like the idea of Vrabel going in there. I think that he would sort that organisation out and would make a big difference, which means we would be getting rid of Rodgers. At the same time, if you think of it from their point of view, historically, teams tend to go opposite to what they've done. They've just had Roberts. If you actually look at the Jets as well, Todd Bowles, defensive guy, Adam Gase, offensive guy, Robert Saleh, defensive guy. Who's next? So it kind of does feel that they might go for an offensive guy. So it could be someone like Todd Monken. He's a little bit older. He's an offensive guy. He's done really well in the past with Lamar Jackson. So it does kind of feel like they might go down that route. Liam Cohen could be one that they go for. Joe Brady. There's lots of guys that are out there that it could be. I think they should go Vrabel and get rid of Rodgers and start again. I don't think that's what's going to happen. I think they will end up going offensive guy, and Rodgers will stick around.
It's a very tough decision for them. Let's take a look at the roster then and see. We've talked heavily about that quarterback position. Do you think regardless of keeping Rodgers or not, they should still draft a quarterback in this draft?
I mean, it would make sense because Tyrod Taylor is a free agent. So it kind of feels like that's the way forward. They haven't got a great deal after that. And so it would be surprising if they didn't. I don't think they're going to go like first round and pick a quarterback. But I think that, you've mentioned in previous shows some of these quarterbacks like a Grant Nussmeier or Jackson Dart or something like that, where you might be able to get these guys sort of like a little bit further back in the draft, and that kind of feels that would make the most sense for them to do that, because they've got to prepare for life without Rodgers, even if he does stay for next year. So I know Rodgers doesn't like that, but to be honest, they just have to do it, because if they don't, they're going to end up just absolutely stuck in like 1 or 2 years' time. So I think a quarterback makes a lot of sense for them, and probably where they will go at some stage. When I was looking at the roster, obviously if Rodgers goes, I think Devontae Adams probably goes as well. That's probably what will happen, in which case they need a wide receiver. So I think that's something. And then Alan Lazard as well is a free agent.
Probably go as well.
He will probably go as well, because that's just how it works with Rodgers, isn't it? So these guys will suddenly disappear on them. I think corner is on the defense is a big need. I think they're fine with running back. I don't think that's a problem. You could argue tight end. Do you really like Tyler Conklin? Not fantastic. You've got a good tight end class, so I do feel like you might want to go tight end on the offense. But when it comes to the defense, I really think corner is a potential problem. DJ Reed is a free agent, and he's probably going to cost quite a lot. And then Hassan Reddick is a free agent as well. So you've got a sort of like a defensive end spot open that you're probably going to want to bring someone in for as well. So there are quite a few needs on this team, which isn't shocking considering where they are in the draft. But I think quarterback is definitely somewhere they need to look at.
Yeah. Cornerback, definitely. Well, they've got Sauce Gardner, haven't they? And
they do, and obviously he's great. He's had a down year this year, but then he was so high the previous 2 years. It's always going to happen. But it's more the fact that basically your number 2 corner is probably going.
I was just looking down the list then, as I was scrolling to see who they had on IR and stuff like that. I think he's injured, still injured, but they drafted Jordan Travis. I completely forgot about that. The quarterback from FSU, the one that got them to their unbeaten season, got injured at the end of the year, which meant they didn't get to the playoffs. I wonder whether there's anything left in the tank for him. Is he still injured, or did he have a re-injury? I can't remember.
I haven't heard anything about him, to be honest. I mean, he might he might be worth a go. I mean, he looked really good, didn't he, when he was playing for FSU? But whether or not anything's really going to happen, it's been so long since he's been able to do anything that I'd be shocked if anything really came from him, unfortunately. But yeah, I mean, I think I just feel like quarterback is something that they do need to look at.
Yeah, well, we know. Well, the O line's decent, isn't it? Elijah Vera took up, very talented. Ollie Fashanu, very talented. Tippmann, obviously fairly new for them, so they could do with some, just some depth at that. Everyone does, but they've got the key people in place. We do like their defense. It's one of their strengths. Obviously, it's got weaker since Salah's left, but looking at the names of Vrabel or anyone like that, then they'll get the best out of those players. So maybe offensively is where they need to look at if there is a clear out. Free agency wise, they're not going to dip into the free agency pool of quarterback because it'd be Sam Darnold, and I cannot see Sam Darnold wanting to go back there again.
No. I mean, they've only got 23 million in cap space, so they're not exactly. Yeah, they're going to struggle to do anything much. I think corner could be somewhere that they decide to go. I think you could, as we've said in previous shows, you have the likes of Asante Samuel Jr., who's cheap. There are corners out there that you can get that are decent, serviceable corners. So I think they might go there. But really, as I was saying, it feels very much like wide receiver. I think that they're probably going to want a wide receiver anyway, because even if Rodgers stays, then Devontae Adams stays, and Alan Lazard stays, it is going to be a concern that they're going to need to bring someone in at some point. So I think wide receiver is a big draft need personally, because they haven't got the money. I mean, they could go out and get someone off the free agency market cheap, but there isn't really anyone that I'd say is going to really move the needle at a price they can do. So I think that's definitely going to be a draft need. Tight end, I think, will be a draft need, like towards the sort of like third, fourth round. And as we've said, quarterback, I think all of these, it's funny, all of the positions, it feels like this team is very much a draft team rather than going out and being able to spend much because they just don't have the cap space to do it.
Well, let's take a look at the draft. Obviously, this is where they're going to have to really be sensible about things. And they're going to have a really tough decision in that first round, I think, because the holes that they need are quite desperate, aren't they? They've got 3 picks.
Yeah, and it's going to be, obviously, we don't know how they're going to go here because you're going to have a new general manager, probably.
Well, yeah.
So
we currently don't know, as we're filming this, if Rodgers is going to be there, who the general manager is going to be, if Adams and Lazard are still there. So it does make it really, really hard. So we're going to have to try and play the scenario out ourselves.
Well, personally, so for me, I would say it depends. I would say we do what we think they should do. So I would say I think they should get rid of Rodgers, which means that Adams and Lazard will probably go as well. And I think we need to look at it as though they've got 3 picks here, and they need a quarterback, they need a wide receiver, and they probably need a tight end or edge, dependent on what is best. I mean, edge kind of feels slightly more important because of Hassan Reddick. Whether he's going to be there or not, probably not. But it's rather than tight end, because Tyler Conklin is still capable. So, but I think they're kind of the 4 positions that we need to look at.
Well, quarterback, as it stands, they could take their first punt at Jalen Milroe. We've still got him on our board as we're going along, so he would be still available. I think he'd work really well there as well. I think Jalen Milroe would be a great candidate for them at this point. He's dynamic. He's a bit different. He's got that big arm. They need to also do something to keep Garrett Wilson on board, because it has come out into the media that if he's unhappy, he wants out. So he might demand a trade, and then they might be stuck with no wide receivers. So if that's the case as well, wide receiver would be something to look at. As you can see from there, T-Mac and Luther Burden have already gone in this draft. I think we've only had one of them go so far on our board. But I think in terms of value, edge rusher is one you mentioned as well. All of the names are still on the board for them. They could have apparently their pick. We've already had Abdul Carter go, so they could take a James Pearce. In terms of value, I think that the wide receivers, maybe it's too high for the ones that are left. I think James Pearce is 100% value at this point, and I think Jalen Milroe is value at this point. What's your thoughts? For me, it's between those two. They go edge rusher or quarterback in terms of value.
I think probably for them where they are, obviously quarterback is the most important position, but I just feel like maybe edge is the way forward here, and it kind of, they can solidify that defense and get it back to being as good as what it was. And then once you go back into the second and third round, I think you'll probably find that there will be, although you won't get Jalen Milroe at 38, you'll still get a quarterback that you probably would class as like a serviceable quarterback that can do something. I'm not saying that means that it's all going to be fine for them, but maybe the idea of being able to develop one, and I know that we've said before this is what they've done and it's not worked, but I think 7 is it's a difficult spot for them to be able to move up enough in order to be able to get one of the really big ones.
Well, they won't be moving up high enough. There's 2 at the top that want them, so
Yeah.
they'll be 1 and 2. So I thought they'd be gone. Let's go with James Pearce, and I think he's definitely great quality, good here. We've got Abdul Carter gone on our board already, so that's why I don't want to pick him. So we've gone in with the edge. I also think at wide receiver you have got Garrett Wilson, so you have got a wide receiver 1. So they could be looking to a wide receiver 2, which I think you can get later on. We've seen from some of the other teams that have wanted wide receivers, there's still a few names floating around round 2, round 3 that they're definitely good enough to be a supporting cast. In that we are at pick 38 now. At quarterback, all of the names are still there by Jalen Milroe. I think that indicates really what people might think, that those are the only 3 that might go in round 1. We're discounting Quinn Ewers from this because we don't know whether he's returning or not. And then we've mentioned Drew Aller. We didn't take him for the Tennessee Titans. We chose not to roll that, and we thought they might go for Sam Darnold. So Drew Aller is still on there. Jackson Dart's still on there. For me, they're the 2 that I think you could technically build on. I think that they've got higher ceilings than a Carson Beck or a Dylan Gabriel, or definitely a Riley Leonard. Or just, who else have they got? Yeah.
What? I mean, I kind of agree. What is available at wide receiver at this point? Because I think that's going to be the other spot. So it's really going to be.
I love Trey Harris. He's a big guy. He was very dominant throughout the whole season. This year, he was the number 1 target. He led the league in receiving yards. He led the SEC in all stats. So Trey Harris is a good top quality. He could be anybody's number 1 going in. So they could go Trey Harris here.
So do we think we'd be better off taking Trey Harris here?
Yes.
And then coming back and getting probably Jackson Dart, because Drew Aller will probably be gone.
Yeah, I think Trey Harris, the value of Trey Harris here is incredible. So, and I absolutely love him, think he's fantastic. So,
And I think it sorts all the issues out. Like I said, the edge is sorted out with Pierce, so that's really helpful. Trey Harris will sort out, because the way we've done it, Devonta Adams is probably gone. So bringing Trey Harris in obviously would be a good move, and then hopefully we'll be able to have Jackson Dart as their quarterback. And then I think that's probably a decent way of them dealing with not having Rodgers and Adams around.
Yeah, there's a possibility they might move up in the 3rd. They're towards the back end of the 3rd.
Yeah.
So there's a possibility they want to move up for this guy. I'm not sure, but he is still there on the board. Jackson Dart's right there. And obviously Jackson Dart played with Trey Harris. The connection between those 2 was insane when they were both on the field at the same time. I know Harris did have a little knock and missed a couple of games. Nothing serious. But matching to a quarterback and a wide receiver that have got the chemistry already, I think makes sense. And I think Garrett Wilson has proved that he can receive the ball from anyone and be a superstar. So I really like that, pairing those two back up again.
So yeah, I mean, as we say, so that sort of, it creates, a quarterback, wide receiver. So that takes out all the problems there. You've got the edge rusher, which takes out the problem of Hassan Riddick. You can go. They do have a little bit of room in the cap space to be able to go out and get a corner or two, so they can really sort that out. And then just sort of like if they wanted to go for an O lineman just in free agency as well, you can pick one of them up pretty cheap as well.
They've got more picks in the draft as well, so
yeah. So they
bolstering up. They don't need a superstar left tackle.
No, exactly. So I mean, they're in a decent spot with that if they can do that. The issue that obviously for Jets fans that they have is that you're going to end up with another quarterback that it's all about developing them and seeing how they go. The alternative is that you just carry on down the same road, and that's where it kind of feels a little bit like. I mean, it'd be interesting what Jets fans think, if they think that keeping Rodgers is the way forward or not. I mean, I just don't see where it changes. That's the problem. It feels like if he's there for another year, you're going to end up with a similar season again. At which, so you sort of think, what's the point? It's not. You're not really getting anywhere. You're just wasting a year. So I think it'll be interesting to see what they do. They're always interesting to see what they do. Normally they get it wrong, but hopefully if they do what we say, then they'll get it right.
I'd be, I'm not a huge fan of the Jets, but I think if they took those players, I'd be excited to watch what they do next. I really would, and so it's got to be good for their fans themselves. I think that'd be a really good draft for them.